morning, everybody. Welcome to the webinar, Inventory Management in Consumer Products. My name is Josh Shinani. I'm a partner here at Saks. I run the firm's consumer products practice, and I also sit as a member of the executive committee. Alongside me today is a colleague of mine, Igor Petrovich, and the warehouse maven himself, John Cosgrove, president and co-founder of Atlantic Holdings Systems, and Nilay Park, CEO of Arvis. So Igor, just tell everybody hello, tell them who you are.
Yeah, sure. Josh, thank you. Igor Petrovich, I've been with the firm for nearly 8 years now. I work really closely with Josh in our consumer products practice. I handle a little bit of consulting, but mostly the audit and accounting aspects of day-to-day, client needs.
Excellent. John, tell everyone about you.
I'm John Cosgrove. I'm president and co-founder of Atlantic Handling Systems here in Fair Lawn, New Jersey. Atlantic Handling is 20 years old. I've been in the industry for 45 years in material handling and systems integration.
Nilay.
Absolutely. Not fun going after John ever because of my experience. Founder and CEO at Arvis. We've been in operation for 2 years, early stage startup based out of Chicago, Illinois. Been in the supply chain industry for close to a decade now. And yeah, happy to be over here.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, thank you all. Thank you all for joining. A couple of quick housekeeping items. One is that the video of the presentation will be available after the webinar. And two, we ask that if you do have questions, please include them in the question box. You will not be able to unmute yourselves, but we will be monitoring the questions as we go along. So just to touch on a couple of agenda items, this is what we plan to talk about today. The latest trends and challenges in the industry, embracing artificial intelligence, which is probably the hottest topic out there. How does it apply to me? What does it cost? What does it look like? John's going to speak on how automation is reshaping the industry. John is, as he mentioned, is 45 years in the warehousing industry. It's undergone tremendous transformation, and the need for warehousing, we know, is constant. And how do we continue to improve it, make it better? He's going to talk all about that. And then finally, we're going to finish with protecting the golden goose, right? Which is our business, which we've grown, which has matured, which has the opportunity to continue to scale, but at what risk? And we're going to talk about some keys there that we always need to consider, especially as we think about our business. So I'm going to open with this statement, and then we're going to go into the latest trends. So business is evolving at a pace so fast that we as business owners can no longer ignore the impact. Some would say if you haven't started embracing certain technology, time has already passed you by. We are here to help you sleep better at night and to at least acknowledge and better understand what is out there and available to help enhance your warehousing needs from an AI and automation perspective. That's not a famous person. That just came from me. I thought of that on the fly there. So before we go into the solutions, we just want to revisit what are the latest trends and challenges. I think if you poll your industry folks and you think about your own business, this is what the industry says currently are the key challenges. And I'm going to invite my colleagues and my panelists as well to chime in. But one, certainly inventory turnover slowed down, resulting in excess inventory, right? There was a tremendous amount of concern at the outset of COVID as to what the ability would be to bring in materials, bring in inventory, what freight would look like, trouble getting certain products, which is still an issue in the industry today. So what did people do? They buy, right? And they're still sitting with massive quantities of inventory on hand. Next, the cost of inventory increased and believes to continue to increase. There's been some stabilization as we've all experienced in the cost of materials, but we do know the cost of debt is still high. The cost of storage is still high. Gas prices are high, which has a direct effect on the cost of our carrying value of our inventory. we just talked about the cost of storing inventory, and John could certainly speak about this. You know, John, what's the average price per square foot of a commercial warehouse in New Jersey about now?
Oh, it's really high. You know, we had a webinar that we did with Darren from NAI Hansen, and it's all over the lot. But the sticker shock that owners are experiencing is, you know, especially if they're renewing their lease, they find out that they're going to be paying a lot more than they did before, so they have to use their cube. And to go back to what you talked about before, Josh, as far as, you know, excess inventory, we all know with the supply chain problem that we had, that people over ordered, and now what that's done is it's hurt their productivity because their warehouses are full, they have nowhere to put the product, so they put the product in aisles and everywhere else, and that cuts down on the productivity as far as picking orders and doing other things.
Yeah, I think that speaks to the next one, demand volatility. I think we've seen, even within our own client base, Igor, right? There's companies that have done very, very well. There's companies that continue to struggle. It's very challenging to plan on what the amount of inventory you need is on a day in, day out basis.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, right? It's almost it's like a perfect storm, right? We had supply chain issues, excess of inventory. We come out of COVID, we're just struggling to figure out what that consumer demand is, what is consumer behavior. Looking at historic data, looking at, you know, what we had prior to COVID, it changed significantly during COVID. The trends during COVID maybe continued a little bit, but still very hard to predict going forward. And I think that next bullet, what speaks to that is a lot of our clients, a lot of partners are thinking about, you know, am I behind the 8 ball on technology? What can I do with technology to be able to get this data, to get this information? And to the next point is, if I go out and buy technology, you know, do I have a workforce in-house to be able to utilize this, to be able to manipulate it, to be able to get the information that I need as a business owner, right? So a lot of our clients are aware, and they get a lot of this stuff, a lot of information to you know, hey, invest in technology, you're going to need it. But, you know, what kind of technology? And I think Nilay and John are really going to go into that. And I think, right, the whole webcast that we're talking about is the play of technology and AI in this. But it's really important for clients to think about, you know, how all those things relate to each other.
Yeah,
I think, Josh, the answer to that question is what we're going to talk about today, because with the labor shortages, you know, what it's going to be, the answer is more automation and the technology to drive that automation. And, you know, a lot of those things point to AI. So
yeah.
anyway, you might want to comment on that.
Absolutely, yeah, and I think Josh touched on it briefly. It's not about when you're going to implement automation or AI, right? Anymore, it's not even a competitive advantage, if you will. Right? Everyone is going to become the new normal. It is already becoming the new normal in terms of applying a lot of the technology that you and I are developing, John, over here.
And John, you've been in the industry a long time. At any point, have you seen a labor struggle shortage as drastic as they say it is right now?
No, you know, Josh, you and I know we've been to clients. I've been to a few of your clients that they actually have more employees than they need, because they know on Mondays and Fridays that you know, 15% to 20% of their employees aren't going to come in. And years ago, they would have let those employees go, but today they need them to continue to fulfill the work. So, you know, one of the things we're going to talk about a little later is the influence of the European automation that's coming to the United States, because Europe has had that problem for several years. You know, they don't have a strong labor force as far as like a workforce for that, and they get 8 weeks vacation, and their wages are higher, which we're all dealing with now here. So it is the perfect storm that way. As Igor said, you know, it's going to be a problem, and the only way to do that is to increase and become more productive.
Absolutely.
And one thing to add on the labor shortage point, right? A lot of time media discussion and the hype around AI is around how AI is replacing workers, right? But in 100% of the cases where we are deploying AI, we're not replacing anyone. We are just trying to fill the jobs which they have been trying to fill for a very long time, right? So there's definitely a massive gap, especially in this supply chain industry. As when McDonald's can pay $20, $25 per hour, who wants to work 8 hours moving boxes, right? It's a hard job.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're right, Nilay, and I think overwhelmingly the whole idea around the trade and people going into the trade is just not as sexy as it used to be, right? I think there's still this impression that people have to go to a 4-year college and in some cases come out with a degree that may or may not be useful. But we need these folks. I think manufacturing and distribution especially is the lifeblood of a lot of business here in New Jersey, certainly out by you in Chicago as well. So I think that's the full list. I think those are the biggest challenges that we continue to hear about as we sit with clients and prospects is, they're looking for help in any of these directions. So we know that AI and technology is the answer, right? I think we all know based on what we hear, based on what we see, the articles we read, the trade shows we go to. The question is how much do I need and how much is it going to cost, right? So the question that always comes to us is, well, Josh, Igor, my cash flow is tight. My money's tied up in inventory. I know you're telling me I need to do this. How do I pay for it, right? What is that? What do I need? Help me, help me, help me. Igor, what do I need to finance the expansion?
I mean, right, the traditional way, right, you have traditional debt, right? We've seen a lot of private equity infusion money, but to add to that, it's what we've seen and what we talked about is in addition to private equity or even mergers or acquisitions out there, there is an increase where clients are looking at very strategic partners. They're looking at very strategic mergers. They might not, right? You have a production facility or a distribution facility, right? They might not, in a traditional way, you just might go and say, oh, I just want to get more clients, or I just want to go get more warehouse space, or something like that. Now they're looking at maybe a startup to partner with, right? To see, can I get some technology in here? I might not have the fund or cash right now to buy, but can I do a partnership? Right? Can I do some kind of equity deal with startup, which works out for them, works out for me, and it's very easy, very different, I think, to what we're used to. It's more often than not, these are the kind of things that people are thinking about. They're also, looking at, what kind of data I could get out of these systems to actually make better decisions, real-time decisions, in order to, maximize cash flow. And then also looking at their space, right? Do you want to manage your own inventory? You want your own warehouse, or do you want to just use an outside party, right? A 3PL where they're kind of doing the whole thing. They're looking at e-commerce. They want to cut back from the warehouse. They'll just they'll sell online. They want to limit the trucks. They want to limit the space. They're trying to
and I think they're looking at ways and we've seen a lot of clients embrace e-commerce purely as a way to get rid of older inventory, right? Because that e-commerce world is global, right? It opens us up to customers everywhere. It helps us convert that inventory to cash really, really quick. And going back to the point you made about good data, I think this is the most important point on the whole spreadsheet. And John and I have talked at length about this many times. It's amazing how many businesses kind of operate and run by the seat of their pants, right? They're able to operate by the cash that's in the bank or going into the warehouse and saying, I think I have the right amount of inventory. But they don't know the cost of the inventory. And when I say the cost of the inventory, the true cost, the cost that includes the labor, the overhead, the machine run rates, the cost of storage, right? Profit margin specific to each SKU and each product line, profit margin by customer. Absent having that kind of real-time good data, it's very difficult to effectively run and manage the business. And when you're able to really take a step back, you realize how much cash is tied up in garbage. And it helps you to unlock opportunities to create that cash to go in and do that thing. And then the last thing too, tax credits and incentives. There are benefits, believe it or not, out there from the government to help you. I know everyone thinks the government is your enemy. So there are opportunities out there to save tax dollars through opportunities. And we could have a whole nother seminar on that, but, and we will. So go ahead, John.
Just a comment, Josh. You know, what's the right amount of space and how should I manage it, internal or 3PL? You know, we come in and we'll do a warehouse analysis for someone. We don't charge them for that, and try to figure out if the space they have is adequate, if they're using all their cube, so on and so forth. And if they're going to go to a 3PL, they should really look for a 3PL that is industry specific. You know, if you're in health and beauty aids, find a 3PL that's doing health and beauty aids for someone else, because you know, I've had oftentimes that people get confused and they just think if they outsource to a 3PL and then they end up taking it back internally. And you know, e-commerce, as our great friend Sandy Bosk used to say, it's a tsunami. You know, it has changed the whole way of business, and in warehouses, you know, it's a whole different process than we used to have by just shipping pallets of goods to stores. So, you know, it's really changed things, and you need more space to do it, and you have to use your space, you know, adequately to make sure you do it, and use technology to drive that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, Nile, the floor is yours. This is what everybody has been waiting for, embracing artificial intelligence.
Awesome. Yeah, we can go to the next slide over here. So what we are doing at Harvest is we are helping operators, warehouse operators and distribution center operators optimize for quality and compliance, right? Some of the things that we were just talking about, optimizing for space, for making sure the quality control is right, whether the processes and operations are in compliance or not, using existing infrastructure. And I'll go into that in a minute over here. But what we are trying to solve for as a metric, if you will, is the POR, or the perfect order rate. And that's one of the most important metric, if you will, in the warehousing space. Now, if you're not familiar with what a POR is, let's say John over here has a warehouse with a POR of 90%, right? It means that 10% of all the goods shipped out from John's warehouse had some kind of an error or failure. It could be damaged goods, it could be the wrong inventory, wrong count. It could just be delayed shipments, it could be expired products, whatever may be the case, depending on the type of product. Right? And what's also important to understand is warehouses, the orders you fulfill is the revenue you get, right? There's no like other external third-party revenue streams that you have over there. So it's very important to get that order rate, perfect order rate, as close as possible to 100%. 100% is not possible, no one is there, but how close can you get to that, right? So, and that's really the metric that we are trying to solve for with Harvest, and again, using the existing infrastructure. Existing infrastructure, meaning your security cameras, right? Most of the warehouses, 3PLs have a lot of video available, which no one ever uses, right? In most of the cases, it goes into a dark room with the security guard who's looking at monitors. If you're lucky, if you have that kind of personnel. Second is your cell phones and tablets, right? Most of the times you have some kind of image source on your floor that you can take pictures from, right? Everyone's carrying a phone anyway. So we are trying to take that video or image data, which is available on the floor. And then we combine text-based information from your ERP or warehouse management system, WMS platforms. The combination of those two gives us context into what we are looking at, and we automate outputs, right? Like I said, into quality control, into compliance, whether people are following the actual rules and regulations or not. If you have the correct productivity of your floor, of your loading docks, of your yard as well. So we can go to the next slide so I can dive a little deeper into a few use cases from our current customers. And over here, you see one of the examples where a worker on the warehouse floor can take a picture right before the products are loaded onto a truck, and it can identify if it's the correct quantity or not. If comparing the data with your warehouse management system, so let's say your WMS says 25 boxes are supposed to go out, we see only 22 boxes, it raises a flag. Right. You also have a proof of load so that when the product actually reaches your customer, there's no chargeback. And they might not claim that, hey, we just got 22 products, because you have the proofs like 25 left our facility, check with your driver, check with your trucks. It's not our responsibility. We're not going to pay for it. And what's also interesting is over here, we are able to capture information like expiration dates. Right now, WMSs and ERPs usually have expiration dates already in there. What's interesting over here is, let's say I'm shipping products from Chicago to Los Angeles, right? We can tell you whether the products would expire by the time it reaches your destination. So it might leave your facility non-expired products, but it might reach your customer's facility as expired, right? So in that case, no one is wrong, right? So we're just trying to fill that gap. And again, giving a layer of automation and making things much more streamlined where possible, without adding any new like wearables, sensors, fancy IoT gadgets, things like that. We can go to the next slide. Another good example of using artificial intelligence is in the yard and the loading docks. Right? Some of the things that cameras are able to capture are things like, when did the trucks arrive into your yard? Right? How long did the trailers and basically any kind of third-party logistics operations happen in your yard? Are they charging you detention charges, demurrage charges, if it's a rail service yard, for example, without proper cause, right? And then also on the loading dock side, how many trucks left your facility at, let's say, 80% capacity, 70% capacity, right? So vehicle capacity utilization, the VCU metric. These kinds of metrics allow you to optimize your operation, that, hey, we don't maybe need 70 trucks coming into a yard, only 50 might fulfill all the needs that we have currently, right? So how can you optimize for that? One good example over here is a facility that we're working in Philadelphia, where they have, it's a rail service yard, and the rail company drops off the rail carriages at 2 a.m. at midnight and starts the clock. Now, they don't see the rail carriages till like 9 a.m. when the first worker comes in, but now they only have like 16 hours to unload all the rail cars. Right? And they've been getting hit with $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 in fines from these rail companies, because, what it's really funny is this rail company sends out a fax to the warehouse.
They still have fax machines?
Exactly. So they send out fax to them, and no one sees the fax. Then they say, hey, we told you that the rail car was coming. Right? So that's the kind of thing where we give them alerts that, hey, the rail car's here, let's unload it. Here's the timestamp. And again, trying to give a layer of automation on top of what the existing processes already are. And the third example that I have, if you go to the next slide, is again, from a quality control perspective, right? We talked about an example where we were counting the products. Now we are also checking for damages, right? As soon as the products are unloaded from your trucks, someone can click a picture, or in some cases, we create quality stations, if you will. It's using the same security cameras, just repurposed at the ground level. And your forklift driver or your pallet jack operator just goes through this area, right? And that's where we capture, again, if we got the right quantity or not, if there were any damages to goods during transportation or not. Because once you sign that bill of lading, right, it's your property. Then you can't go out and claim to anyone that, hey, we had damaged goods. Because in so many cases, you're taking and the workers are judged on how fast they unload the trucks. Right? So their goal is to just unload the trucks, put the stuff away. And then 3 weeks later, when you're shipping the products out, that's when you notice the damages, and then you try to follow the chain of command, and no one's going to pay you for that. Right? So over here, without disrupting their flow, again, with the workers still being able to unload as fast as possible, a quick snapshot giving them real-time feedback on any damages allows them to have that quality control process in place. And then these kinds of quality checks are becoming more and more important across the industry, because everyone wants correct products on time. But if you think about industries like food and beverages, right? With the new FSMA Act, the Food Safety Modernization Act, the FDA requires food traceability across all your critical points. Warehouses and distribution centers is one critical point as defined by the FDA. No one was tracking so far, right? Now, suddenly, the rule goes live in 2026. Everyone needs to track. What are you going to do with it? Are you just going to invest a lot of money? Or you could start experimenting with technologies like what we have developed over here to get that traceability and that data available. Right, so keeping up with the regulations as they evolve becomes much more easier as well when you have newer technologies. So just wanted to share some case studies over here to give an idea of how AI is actually being used today. And
so let's just kind of role play for a second. So
yeah.
I'm a new customer. I call you, ring, ring, ring. You pick up the phone on your side, and I say, Nile, help me out, brother. All I read about, all I hear about is AI. I need it. What does it mean? What direction do I go? How do I even prioritize level of importance, right? As to where I feel I need to put my dollars, and then how much are people budgeting for things like this when they think about and we're going to do the same thing with John after when he does his part, but pretend I'm coming into this from the very beginning.
Absolutely, yeah, no, and that's a great question, and this is what happens a lot of times as well, right? People when they reach out to us or when they meet us at a trade show or a conference, they think if you're talking about AI solution, an enterprise-wide solution, it's going to cost $500,000, $1 million of implementation. It's like an ERP process where it takes 2 or 3 years. Not true at all, right? Our pricing is like between $20,000 to $30,000 a year per facility. So these savings that you're seeing, it's like 10-fold, 20-fold already from just an implementation. It takes between 4 to 6 weeks for us to go in and do a complete deployment, get the operations team onboarded, and get them started using our technology. The beauty of it is that most of it integrates into your existing processes. So there's no new change management or training required. And that's what we try to tell people as well. If you're coming to us with an application, just like John mentioned, right, we would go into your warehouse, for example. We would map out your process. From the moment the truck enters your gate, all the way to products being put away in your racks and aisles, what are each and every step? Where do your products touch your softwares? Where do people touch your products? And we lay out all those steps and then see where can AI automate and what are the time and cost savings over there. Now that becomes an easy justification that, hey, you're spending 5 minutes per pallet for a quality check before you're shipping out. You're shipping 100 pallets a day multiplied by 365 days. And we're going to minimize that to 20 seconds, right? Here you go. This is the savings we're going to give you.
And what do you say to the people when they say, is this just a fad? Like, is this really is this really the future? Like, am I wasting my time doing something like this? How do you answer that question? I mean, you deal with people who are completely naive to people who think that AI is going to destroy the world, right? So I can only imagine the type of questions that you get. But how do you, what do you say to people who are just not believers?
We say try it, right? And you don't have to sign a 3-year contract or something like that. You just try it for 3 months. See how it affects your operation, how it changes it for the better, if you are actually seeing the savings you promised or not. If not, great, right? Like no one's forcing you to use this technology. But one thing, like I said early on as well, is right, it's not even a competitive advantage anymore. People down the street, the other warehouses are already using it. A lot of times, and this is maybe specific to the supply chain community, but people who are using this technology are more than happy to share their use cases, case studies like you're seeing on the screen over here. How are they using it? When warehouse operators see other warehouse operators use this tech, they realize that it's not a fad. It's not just like a drone thing, right? Like, hey, we're going to optimize and ship everything with drones. It's not like that. This is a technology which is here to stay.
Hey,
Yeah,
Josh, can I just comment?
of course, please.
You know, in my experience over the years, I've seen a lot of things come and go. You know, years back, there was this big fad. It was supposed to be RFID was going to take over warehouses, and
And what
they
does
were
that
going
mean?
to embed
It
this radio frequency
down.
ID. They were going to use that, and it was going to take the place of barcoding. Well, of course, you still see barcodes everywhere today. There were problems with it as far as it being read in a warehouse because it couldn't read through steel, where there's a lot of steel and where there's liquid. But I have to tell you that this AI revolution is probably, in my experience so far, it's the fastest I've ever seen something. I predict within 5 years, people are it's gonna be like having a warehouse management system. You know, everyone's gonna have to have it.
And John, what's the difference between AI versus what you're doing? And to just talk about the differences and talk
Well,
about
what I do is, you know, our technology is we supply the hardware that has controls where we can do conveyor systems that sort, we do sortations and that type of thing. But what AI is doing is it's providing the intelligence to make that so much more efficient. And what's happened is that, you know, there's something, Neil, you can speak to the digital twins that when AI puts something together, there's like opposing parts of it, and it almost develops what we would call a simulation. And when it finally generates what AI generates as a solution, it works through all of that. So you're really having that do that for you. I don't know, Neil, if you want to speak to that more.
Yeah, no, I think you nailed it over there. I think AI is sort of the brain for all the hardware, right? So the automation, which was more like just repeating manual tasks, now it has a much more context to it, right? So if you're talking about robots or even robotic movers, that is possible that you're not just directing it to go from one point to other. If it sees an obstacle, it takes another route. That's like a layer of intelligence which is being added to all the hardware activities.
Yeah, John, you said something before, and I want to go back to it. You used the word efficiency, right? You never said necessarily replacement of people. You said efficiency. In my eyes, is efficiency makes the process work better, so that people can free up their time in order to do more valuable things, right? So instead of standing there,
exactly,
and boxes, whatever it is, I'm going to now redeploy you to whatever it is, sales or whatever it may need. That's going to add this, and we love to use this term here at Saks, but add enterprise value to the organization.
It is, and and companies can't find people to fill this void as it is. So we need something to help generate, you know, productivity to continue to, you know, meet the standards of the consumer. And the bar has been set very high by people like Amazon. I mean, the reason Amazon's so successful is they know how to do it. You know, they have the automation and technology to do it. I mean, the reason they sell every product known to man is because of that.
Right, and I think Nilay, talk about this for a second, because I think a lot of times the opposition is always, well, my people are just not going to embrace technology, right? And in your experience when going through the implementation and everything, what's the energy like? What's the employee morale towards embracing something like this?
Yeah, there's usually two camps, right? Like in all cases, there's one which does not want to change things because they've been going and doing it the same way for the last 20, 30, 40 years. And there's another camp which, to John's point, they are overburdened, right? So we have to position the technology where we are saying that we are not here to replace. We're not asking you to do anything else. In fact, you would be able to do 2 or 3 people's job now. And instead of you coming in and working on a Saturday, you'll be able to finish your work over the week itself, right? So getting people on board and trained and understand the technology and what it works, how it works, is also important. One of the things that's also critical, which comes up a lot of times, is like privacy. It's like, hey, are you tracking me? Like, we don't do any kind of facial recognition, right? In fact, we blur out all faces before our AI runs analytics. That's not the point of the technology, and it's important that the people who are actually going to be using the technology, right, understand this, right? Not just the CFO or the chief operations officer who's going to buy the product, but the forklift driver and the quality manager on the floor, that they understand how the technology works.
The change is hard, Josh. Change
Yeah.
is hard, but as you as I have experienced, you know, oftentimes it's not the person who's out on the warehouse floor who's resisting the change as much as the ownership who, you know, we've been doing it this way since 1985. We've survived. We don't need to overinvest into something that might fail, they feel. So, you know, and we both have seen it. We've had a couple of people we know that didn't do what they should have done, and they ended up dying, right? So.
Yeah, and I think you see the ROI, right? I think it always comes back to two things to me. One, it comes back to hard dollars, right? Which is what is in the example here. And then the other piece of it, which we're not going to talk about today, but we're going to talk about it another webinar in the future, is it maximizes the value of the business, right? Look, we all want to think that we're going to be in the same business for 20 years, 50 years, 100 years. But the reality is that's not what the marketplace is dictating today, right? It's a lot of continuous movement. There's a lot of private equity. There's a lot of strategics in the business, and they're looking to grow. And Nilay, from an outsider's perspective, right, I'm a buyer, and I come in and I see the value of the technology that's in place. What does that do? What does that do to the value of my business?
I mean, again, you're improving your profit margins in the end, right? So you guys are the finance people, so you tell me when profit margins increase, there's the value is just going one way, right? Yeah. And whether you're trying to roll it up to private equity, which is like a big rage right now with a lot of 3PLs being consolidated, especially after the COVID boom, when everyone in your neighborhood had their own, like, oh, we're starting a 3PL, we're starting a warehousing company. Now it's getting consolidated quite a bit. And if you are in that space, you want to roll it up, you need to have an efficient process, right? No one wants to buy a business which is run the same way it was in the 60s. 100%. So that makes a lot of difference as well.
Yeah,
you're protecting your investment. You know,
I think it always comes back. Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Just like if you own real estate and you put money into it, you're not, you know, you're doing it because you want to keep your investment viable, and that's the same thing here. And the great part about it is you also gain on the productivity side, which means you make more money for the business, and you're investing in your future.
It's just like a simple example, right? Like if you're selling a house right now with an electric charger in your garage or a Nest thermostat and stuff like that, it's just like marginal improvements on technology front, but to the buyer, it's like, okay, you know, this is a well-equipped house. It's not like old thermostat from 70s. So just similar analogy over there.
Yeah, it's a great point. It's a great point.
Yeah,
Igor, you say something? Go for it.
I want to add another thing, right? We talked a lot about apprehensive labor shortage and all that, and I think it's really important. What we stress a lot to our clients is that you have generations, right? You have generations that's growing up, like Nilay just said. There's AI and technology in our houses, right? You know, Nest systems in everyday dealings. We go to Starbucks and see it, right? Sort of getting adapted. We're sort of getting used to that. We're entering the workforce, right? And we understand, we might not know a specific way, but we understand that there is a way to do something faster, quicker, more efficient. So think about somebody, you know, we have a client that's looking for warehouse help, right? You know, employee worker. And you know, there's somebody there that's been working for 15, 20 years and very used to doing everything the old way, the manual way. Drive the forklift off the truck, get out of the forklift, count the boxes, write it on maybe a piece of paper or something. But you implement Nilay software and you have somebody younger that can unload 2 trucks in an amount of time, who doesn't have to do as much manual stuff. That becomes more desirable to them. They feel like they're developing. They feel like they can relate to it, right? They feel like that this job has also moved with the time, right? Josh, we talk about accounting, right? We talk about what we're doing in order to become more desirable for new candidates out of college. You know, what are the tools that we're using to make things streamlined rather than, you know, we still talk to guys that say, I used to do this on Blue Ledger paper. Yeah, you used to use Excel for everything. I can't imagine using Blue Ledger paper. And I think that's also a notion. That's also something business owner needs to understand, that new generations are embracing this. They might not know the exact answer and say, here's a software, but they definitely understand that there is definitely a way to make it quicker, more efficient, and sometimes even easier.
I love it. No, you're 100% right. All right, John, let's go to the warehouse floor.
Okay, go to the next slide. Okay, what we're showing here is this is a company, you know, even though e-commerce has exploded, we could use this type of situation for e-commerce, but there's still a lot of people that are selling to mass merchandisers. There's still some brick and mortar stores. And what we're showing here is that we have a 40-foot high ceiling. And if you look all the way to the right, you'll see it's a 3-level high, what we call a pick module. And what they do here is they pick orders in the pick module and they send them to stores. But it could be the same product, but it might account for 4 different SKUs because it has a label. It's going to Walmart, it needs a certain label on it. If it's going to Target, it needs the Target label, so on and so forth. So this specific application, it had over 2,600 SKUs. And each one, you know, had to be picked for that line. So those 3 lines that are coming out, each level was associated. One was Walmart, one was Target, and the other was all their other orders. But what you see there is that we use the height, and that pick module can be, it can become automated to the point of where we could put a pick to light system in, where you can scan a barcode and it will light up and tell you how many to put in that box at that time, so on and so forth. So you can put that in. If you're now picking and you're just using carts, we go to a conveyor system there, which really would help to do that. And of course, AI would be a great addition for some of the things that it can do as far as simulating what we have to do and go further. You can go to the next slide. This is just a standard rack application, but what we did for this company is we've got them down to a very narrow aisle. So they're using very narrow aisle trucks. The trucks are more expensive, but what they're doing is they're using their height, and we got to put in almost double the amount of racking that they had when they had 10 to 12-foot aisles. So by making that investment in the fork truck, they didn't have to move, and it works out. Now, what happens here is technology, warehouse management systems, all those things can be added to this. You know, you can use your warehouse management system for location and locator system, and it all works. Now, what we normally do here, those trucks are very expensive. So what they will do is they will go down the aisle, pick out a pallet, bring it out, and then drop it down, and then a less expensive fork truck will take it to the dock and ship it out. You go
John,
to the next one.
John, how much do you cringe when you walk in and see inventory on the floor?
Well, it's a game changer, because all it does is it decreases the productivity, you know. And when you see things all over the place, you know, it just takes so much longer to pick and to get things right, and you make mistakes too, because people can't find product. They spend, you know, a long time serpentining throughout aisles and pallets all over. So, you know, of course, if it's in a much more orderly fashion, it's better. Now, this specific slide shows a pick module from the inside, and you have flow rack on each side, and then you have gravity conveyor, two sides of gravity conveyor, and the conveyor down the middle is a power conveyor. So the way the order starts is they take and they put a generic barcode on the box. They identify the box. It's a license plate for the box. They'll scan a pick ticket and they'll send it down. This specific application had pick to light. So the light, when they scan that pick ticket, their individual zone will light up and they can do those picks and so on and so forth. This is a very unique application because we were given the task of storing 2,500 pallets above this. So what we did was, instead of just building a flow rack on the bottom with the pick module and only one level. We built pushback rack on the top where we can load it 3 pallets from one side and 4 pallets from another, and we got them to their 2,500 pallets, where normally if they just put in a pick module at 8-foot high racking and conveyor, the space above would all be lost up to the 40-foot high ceiling. So, and that's what we talked about before, you know, in speaking with some of the real estate people we network with, there's a lot of confusion with owners now because prices are so high, Josh, on real estate, and availability isn't that great. So what they have to do is take and retool what they're doing right now. And you know, if you retool and do this, and Neil, you may want to comment on how you can help us with technology in these kinds of applications.
Go ahead, Neil, if you want to answer. If not, I got a question for John too.
Okay, Neil, I said you might want to comment on how you know, AI can help us in these situations.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And there's, like I said, you know, there's a lot of relationship when you said, you know, there's the need for reading the correct lines, right? For example, a layer which helps you automate portions of your automation is where AI can come into play. It can not only help you in terms of identifying from a vision perspective, but also from a predictive capability perspective, right? So if you're seeing from your conveyor belts XYZ number of products leaving on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, you know how to order it as well in the future, right? So predictive capability from an ordering perspective, from an inventory management perspective, all of these intelligence can become part of the automation system itself because you are all actually moving the goods over here.
Right. So in this specific case, we pick these boxes. When the picker knows that the box is done, you can push it on the power conveyor, which we then take it out and we manifest it. And what we'll do is we can send it down to a sorter, and we have all different types of sorters. We can sort some that can do, you know, 90 a minute. We have some that can go up to almost 200 a minute using a shoe sorter, we call it. And we sort by, you know, truck line, or if it's e-commerce, where it's, you know, FedEx, UPS, United States Postal, whatever it is that they want to use. So we can do it that way. So yes.
John, let me ask you a question. So a lot of times the question will come up where, you know, look, I've got a growing business. I'm in about, I don't know, 15,000 square feet, 20,000 square feet. But the business is growing and I just don't have the ability to go into another space right now for whatever it is. I can't find it. There's nowhere close. It's too expensive. Kind of what's the, you know, as someone who's an expert with all these years of experience, you come in and you say, all right, I understand the mission. What are the questions you ask, or what are usually the opportunities that are there to be unlocked?
A lot of the opportunities are aisle widths of fork trucks that they currently use. You know, the technology today, they can get fork trucks that we can get down to, you know, 4 or 5 feet aisles as opposed to 10 to 12 foot. So that's another thing.
And what about height? I was just going to say, is that how underutilized is that?
You know, we'll go in and take a look, and you know, we understand the current regulations as far as fire sprinklers and you know, how many feet you have to be under, and high pile storage, and we'll do analysis on all of those things and get them to as high as they can with their current fork trucks. You know, sometimes they have to change out their fork trucks and get trucks that can go higher, but the gain is so great as far as you know, the real estate's involved. And we'll look at it that way. We look at aisle size, we look at height, and one of the things is the next slide. If you want to go to that, I'll tell you a little bit about that. You know, I spoke a little bit before about European technology. So this unit is called a vertical lift module. And what it does is it has shelves inside, but I can go up to 52 foot high. It's technology that's really used in Europe a great deal, and it's coming here to the United States more and more. It's been here, but it's being used more and more now because people, you know, it's a great tool as far as you can store as much as 9,000 square feet in only 150 square feet of floor space. So it's a great tool, and it's automated, and it has its own warehouse management system within it. And so you can see there's a light bar there and there's a laser. So when the tray comes down, if they have to pick a part out of that, the laser will point to that part. So, I mean, these are all things that the technology improves and has helped it. This is very big in aerospace and, some of the medical suppliers who are building medical equipment and so on and so forth. So.
Excellent. Excellent. Thanks, John. All right. And
John, I wondered for a long time, how does Europe do things smaller, right? Like when you go to Europe, houses tend to be a little smaller. Their houses tend to be a little smaller, or they're just a little more efficient.
Yeah, they've had to be because of the labor shortage. That's what, and then the cost of labor, and we're running into that now. I mean, the minimum wage is one thing, but what do you if you're going to pay someone $20 who's just a low entry person, what are you going to pay someone who's been with you for 8 to 10 years now?
right.
So, I mean, and more, and it goes back to what Josh and Neil said. We're not finding that we're replacing people. What we're doing is we're making them more productive so they can produce more and ship more. And in the end, it covers the cost.
Excellent. Excellent. So as we start to wind down, growth, scalability, that's exciting, right? We all want to grow. I want my business to grow. With that always comes challenges. And I wouldn't be an accountant. We're not pessimistic by nature, but the idea behind risk management and protection is always so important, right? So these are the things we want to do to keep the money in the business, keep the business profitable so that we can continue to enhance the capabilities and bring in the things that Nilay and John are talking about. And biggest thing always is diversification of revenue streams and customers, right? Not having all your eggs in one basket. Investing in the right technology. We talked about warehouse automation. We talked about AI. The ERP WMS is extremely important. We talked at the very beginning about good data and what that does to a company, and cybersecurity, right? Like even Nilay said, right? People are overly concerned about privacy and protecting the inner workings of the business and the finances and making sure that that's in place well. Monitor and adjust KPIs as needed, right? These can't be static, right? Business is changing every day, rapid. To be able to tap in and not only understand where you are financially, but understand where the industry is financially as well, and use that, right? So we look at industry, we look at geographic location and region to really understand where we are as a business. Igor said it before, data analytics, right? This next generation of folks into the business are so focused on data analytics as a mean to provide themselves with good data in order to make those decisions. The next one I think is extremely important, and that's why, even us as Saks associate ourselves with guys like John and guys like Nilay. The power is in the partnership, right? You need to have a foundation of folks who you can lean on all up and down the supply chain in order to make sure that you are putting forward the best opportunities for yourself, for the business. This is where a lot of people get lost. They tend to be a know-it-all. They tend to think they know everything. They may have certain relationships for 20, 30, 40 years and think that that's the best, right? I think we're constantly learning every day, and we're constantly meeting new people every day, and there's new things that are happening, and information is extremely powerful. So, we always encourage people, evaluate the relationships, make sure they're the right relationships, because there's big dollars at stake here. So why surround yourself with people who don't have the highest capabilities? And then the last thing is, the focus on the employees, right? We talked about what it is they're looking for when they enter the workforce, and understanding how we continue to develop and evolve them, whether that's through leadership training, on-the-job training that's that's respective of their industry and their position. We want them to feel like they're part of the long-term organization. You know, helping them embrace technology, right? That is going to be the biggest thing that keeps somebody in the seat today versus somebody who would potentially leave or exit the business. So again, I think, again, growth and scalability is very exciting, but you got to understand the mechanics that have to be in the business in order to handle that growth and handle that scalability and making sure that the business is moving in the same direction. So we call it protecting the golden goose. That's important. Okay. Just some upcoming events. So we're going to continue the webinars. We think it's very important. Our next topic is going to be current trends in M&A. That'll be in August, and then we're going to go back to the ERP and the good data and what that means. We'll do that early September, and then we're going to spend the whole webinar focused on scaling your business and creating value. And we're going to do that early October, and that's all going to lead into my golden goose, which is the Consumer and Industrial Products Conference, which will be November 1st. We encourage you all to register. If you want more information, please contact the link below. But we're very excited about it. Sponsorships are available if businesses want to partake as well. It's going to be at the American Dream Mall again in East Rutherford, New Jersey. We had the conference there last year. It was just a great event. So if you have the opportunity to attend, we certainly encourage you to do that. And you know, we do these for our guy, Sandy. Sandy's the reason why why we're all together. He brought us together. He was not only the technology guru and wizard, but he was a tremendous human being who, I mean, lived and breathed the supply chain, and we miss him every day. And we do this for him. So I would be remiss if we didn't, acknowledge Sandy for all his hard work, and we miss you, brothers. So, yeah. And with that, I want to open it up to questions, and if there are any, if not, we'll go through the panel. And Igor, why don't you give us your final takeaway? Oh, can't hear you.
Sorry, listen, keep evolving with the time. Just embrace the technology. The new generation of the labor force is embracing it. And just keep moving along. If you need any financial advice, financial data, on efficiency, how you're reviewing your data, just reach out to us. We're happy to help with the KPIs and streamline that process. Just like Nile can streamline that process with the warehouse. Josh and I can help out with the KPIs and the CFOs are reviewing, because there's definitely efficiencies there. Just not get anymore, and it's also probably spending a lot of your time. So just feel free to reach out to us. We'd love to talk.
Excellent. John?
I think the big takeaway from today is when you look at the four of us that, before you do anything, we all need each other. You need to look at it from a financial standpoint. You need to look at it, the technology part and the automation. So, I think the team together is so important. You just can't come in and for me to go in there and say to someone, I'm going to automate your warehouse without looking into AI, the way things are right now, and the changes, and you have to find out financially if it's right for you, the ROI. So together we have a team where we can do all of that for you in one place, and I think that's a great thing.
Nile, what's your takeaway?
Yeah, no, just to add over there, there's a lot of hype, a lot of noise around AI and automation and all these new technologies that can get very overwhelming if you're looking at it from an outside perspective for the first time. So my advice is just cut through the noise, start small, give it a try, and like Igor was saying, start embracing technology and take small steps at a time.
Yeah, you're right. And you have to be a believer, right? And to to go back to something Sandy used to say all the time, it was, you have to evolve or you die, right? And that's the reality of the business world we live in, because you are very wrong if you don't think that your competitor and the guy down the street and everybody else isn't entertaining this or knee deep in it already. And if you don't act now, you're in a lot of trouble. And I do go back to, I think having the right support system and brain trust is incredibly powerful and incredibly important, especially in today's day and age. The world has become too complicated to go at it alone. So we're always here to help. I thank my panelists. I thank you all for watching. The video will be made available for everybody who wasn't able to attend live, and stay tuned for the next one. I'll see you all on August 15th. Thanks so much. Take care.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
Thank you.